Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Teach Middle East podcast. My name is Leisa Grace, and today I have Dillon with me, and she is going to be talking to us about lifelong learning as an educator, how educators can become purposeful and intentional about their learning throughout their career.
You are listening to the Teach Middle East podcast, connecting, developing, and empowering educators.
Welcome, Anna.
Thanks so much, Lisa, for having me on the podcast.
It's my pleasure to have you. I know our communications got all kinds of frayed throughout the holiday season, but I'm glad that we were able to catch up and to make it to this episode. So before we start and before we jump into the episode, can you do a brief intro? I love to ask my guests to do that so that I don't, butcher it or miss things out. Go ahead.
Yeah, Anna Dillon. I am from Ireland originally. Originally, I trained as a primary school teacher and worked in Ireland as a primary school teacher, as a principal of very small schools, and also as a teacher educator. And I came to the UAE 8.5 years ago. I started working as a teacher, then as a head of faculty in a kindergarten back with ADIC. And then I've been at Zayed University ever since in a variety of roles in teacher education on our early childhood programme. I was chair of the department, director of the Early Childhood Learning Centre, which we used to have on campus. So working between primary schools and kindergartens and the early childhood education. And I just started a new job at Emirates College for Advanced Education 3 days ago, or something like that. So I'm so very happy to have had that range of experience within the UAE. It's hard to leave. So it's really nice to have gone from one job in Abu Dhabi with my lovely colleagues inside university and move on to a new challenge.
Yeah, I know it's definitely hard to leave. Like anyone who's been here for more than 5 years, it gets harder and harder every year to decide whether you will stay or you will go. So you just end up staying because you can't find strong enough reasons to leave. I guess when we find the strong reasons to go, we'll go. It might be 20 years from now, but it's so good to have you on the podcast. So teacher education, very, very important topic, and obviously something that you're very familiar with. But today we're not going to be talking about initial teacher education. We're going to be talking about continuing learning as a professional within the education sector. And we're talking lifelong learning. And can you define for me what lifelong learning is, as the podcast is talking about lifelong learning as an educator? What is lifelong learning?
Well, I suppose I kind of meant to say there at the beginning when I was introducing myself, my research interests and my passions are bilingual education, early childhood education, teacher education. Lifelong learning isn't an area of expertise for me, apart from being a lifelong learner, as we all are, of course. And this whole notion of thinking more about lifelong learning has come to me as I learn new things. So this is where this has all come from. I mean, I've worked in the education sector for over 20 years, and you're continually learning how to approach pedagogy in different ways, and also sticking with the things that you're building on from the past, all of those skills that we've had from the past and how they grow and develop over time. And I think with learning certain skills, that's what I'm going to drill into now in a couple of minutes. Learning certain skills really makes and provides a chance for you to come back and reflect on those basic good pedagogical skills and how we can apply them in our own practice as educators too. So as I said, my interest is in language education, and this has come from my learning to ride a motorcycle recently. And was that clear from my talk with you? Yes. And I realized as I was learning to ride this motorcycle, and I'm still in process, I haven't passed my test yet, I'm not quite there. As I was engaging with this, I realized that my body was learning a whole new language, the language of the motorcycle. So it kept every single time I would come back after a lesson, I would be making a comment on the teachers, making a comment on what I'd learned, how I had learned, my frustrations. And it really brought me back to that absolute beginner stage and all of the things that I was learning from that. So that's really where this has come from. And it's making me think about all sorts of lifelong learning. And by learning this new thing, I'm 41 now, by learning this new thing that was quite difficult to get a grasp of at this age, how I can learn even more new things and how that's hopefully going to impact very positively on myself as a teacher educator.
So I have a question for you, because I was looking at your brief and you were saying that your learning how to ride the motorcycle has kind of cemented some of the basics of pedagogy in your mind. What was that relationship that you discovered between the two?
Well, so you turn up to the driving school in Mustafa and you're there with everybody else and everybody's at a different place. Most of the people there actually getting a motorcycle license already know how to ride a motorcycle since they were children. And there are very few absolute beginners there. I was the only one there at the time. So we're all at a different place in our learning. And the instructors have a certain amount of drills that they need to coach you through. And you never kind of get the same instructor. And this was my complaint at the beginning. Like, they were really nice guys and everything, but they were kind of forcing me to do things too quickly. And that made me really think about, noticing where the child is at and starting with where the child is at, starting with where the learner is at, and how we have to catch the learner in their zone of proximal development and bring them to that next stage. So, for example, thinking about the gradual release of responsibility. So one of these things was, I came along maybe my third day and the instructor said, okay, we're going to do figure of eights like this. And I went, okay, I can only go in a straight line now. And he said, no, come on, do it. So I said, okay. And I tried and I fell off. And anyway, but it's okay because you're going very slow. I found it really, really scary. And he noticed how I was feeling. So he said, okay, I'll write it a few times for you. You just watch me. And I was like, okay. And I watched him. And then he said, just follow me. And I followed his path exactly. And we did it a few times and it was slow and everything. And he built up a level of trust with me. After a while, he said, okay, now I'm going to follow you. And so I went and he followed me. And after a couple more goes, I noticed he had gone away. And he just let me do it myself. And I thought, how wonderful. I felt so good. I was like, yes, he left me to do it myself. And I felt so good as a learner because I had that experience of, he trusts me to be able to do it myself while still holding my hand in the initial stages. So that's one of those things that I noticed. Another thing that I've noticed is this whole area when we're thinking about basic pedagogical skills that we find in every classroom. Of course, we have gradual release of responsibility. We have contextual learning. Sometimes, if something doesn't make sense within the context, it's very, very difficult to do it. And, with some of these online learning tasks that children are doing at home these days, it's very removed from the context. For example, a U-turn when I had no good reason to do it. I was like, well, why do I have to do that when I can just go this way? So this whole notion of contextual learning came up for me as well. Another thing was, drilling. In the language classroom, we do engage with certain drills. Drills are useful when it comes to learning a language, but not all of the time. We can drill and kill too much. So we have to vary our methods, of course. We know this as educators, but going through this really cemented that for me again. At the motorcycle school, it's all drills. You just go from this drill to this drill to this drill without any time to just practice and have fun and play. And, it's that kind of, you need to keep that learning playful in order to really enjoy it because learning's got to be fun. And going from one drill to the next isn't really that much fun,
Yeah. I wonder, though, what prompted you to want to learn to ride a motorcycle?
At a personal level, I really enjoy being a pillion passenger with my partner. And I'm a good pillion passenger. I'm good on the back. But that could hold me back at some point. Maybe someday I'll want to go and take a bike myself on a back road along with some friends or something. And I thought, why not? I have the opportunity. Abu Dhabi is a wonderful place. It's dry. You don't have to deal with rain or anything like that. There's a very good process that's available to us to do it. And I thought, why not? I have the time. I have the motivation. And it's time for me to challenge myself to do something new. So that was really it. And it goes along with, I've learned how to do off-road driving, this desert driving. And we would do that when we would go camping, but I've joined a group to do this off-road driving. And I've noticed how doing that has also enhanced my motorcycling skills. This is, it might sound strange, but talks about like noticing features of a language before they can be fully acquired. You've got to notice certain things before they really, really become embedded. And so I've been told, you don't use the handlebars to balance. You've got to hold them like baby chicks. And I was like, okay. And I was hanging on to those handlebars because I thought, well, if I don't hang on, I'm going to fall off. And there was one day that I noticed, I had to scratch my face, and I noticed that my hand was off the handlebars, but I was still on. And I realized, no, I'm using my legs. I'm not using my hands. And it just reminded me again of encouraging learners to engage in noticing, to engage in looking at their metalinguistic awareness and looking at the features of language so that they can become embedded.
Yeah. I also, while listening to you, thinking about whether or not the pedagogy that we have in the classroom, if it's any at all affected by the teacher's unwillingness to try new things. Because while you were talking, what struck me was the fact that you went out intentionally to learn something new, which then fed back into your knowledge and your pedagogy. What advice would you have for teachers who feel a little bit stuck in, the methods and the things that they're doing in the classroom and want to freshen things up a little bit?
Well, I think, professional development is really, really important. We all engage. And I mean, from an educational perspective, like engaging in professional development about teaching and learning is really, really important. Sometimes as a teacher, you've been with the children all day or whatever age group you're teaching. You've been teaching, you've been engaging in teaching and learning all day. And sometimes you don't want to think about the same thing. You need a break. So especially with the work is so intense at the moment when you're going between this online and on campus and everything. So you need a break sometimes from thinking about education specifically. But I suppose by learning a new skill that's completely outside of that, you're still engaging in some kind of personal development, which can become professional development. And that's what I've noticed through all this. I kind of thought, at this age, I don't think I can really learn anything new. And a couple of my friends who've been riding motorbikes for years were like, no, we think it's too late for your muscle memory. It's not. I can do it now. And it's encouraged me. I'm starting to learn a new language. I love languages anyway. And I had thought, okay, I'll stick with my languages that I know. It's fine. I'll just try and improve them. And this has kind of taught me, no, I can go and learn a new language that's completely unrelated to the languages that I already know. So that's the next step. So now that the motorcycle I'm almost at mastery level, and my goodness, it took me a lot of process. I had really to have a lot of waiting to get to that next level and a lot of practicing and even drilling myself. And then reminding myself, no, it's supposed to be fun, just play. And, that playful aspect of learning is so important. So I would say, it's really just as useful to engage in kind of personal development that can translate into professional development.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of times when teachers hear about professional development that would have any kind of impact on their pedagogy, they normally think, let me go do a course on teaching and learning, or let me go do this or that. That's really specifically related to education. And very, very often that just means that you're not getting fresh new knowledge that you could infuse into your classroom. Mm-hmm. And what are some of the things you think? I mean, I know riding a motorcycle might be a little bit out there for many people, but what are some of the things teachers can do that's not exactly CPD, that is very education focused, but it's personal development that could lend itself nicely to helping improve their teaching and learning or their pedagogy?
Oh, wow. That's an interesting question. I'm not sure. I mean, there's with the motorcycle ride, that kind of thing, if you're interested in cars and stuff like that, the off-roading is a really nice experience as well. And you really learn how to handle a car a different way. Learning a new language, I will always go for learning a new language. Also things like to do with wellness. I suppose you can see alternative therapies are becoming more and more popular as well. I took a Reiki course last year, Reiki level 1 and Reiki level 2. And I really enjoy it as a way of, I suppose during online teaching, I found some of that quite stressful. Not the teaching itself being stressful, but the being at home all the time, and I needed to change up my routine. And I found that bringing Reiki into my life was helping me to enter a calmer space when I needed to. So things like learning maybe an alternative therapy or things like that might be interesting for people as well who maybe don't want to go out and do something that's quite intense. You can do it in different ways, taking up yoga, going and doing a dance class, things like that could be really nice for people. And again, you're learning something new, no matter what it is, you're learning something new. And that brings you back into the mindset of being a learner, which is always going to help, I think, in your pedagogy.
Yeah, no, those are some good. I don't know what Reiki is actually. I've seen it all over the place, but I I've never actually tried to find out what it is.
It's like, how can I describe it? It's a therapy that's used for kind of energy healing. So it's basically about bringing your energy back to yourself. It's really calming. It's not massage or anything. It's just literally holding your hands over certain parts of your body and just concentrating the energy in. And it can be healing. It can be relaxing. I mean, it's definitely relaxing. So yeah, and that can be really nice to kind of do something that helps you to recharge as an educator, because it's busy. It's busy in classrooms.
No, it's definitely busy. I do agree with you. I mean, so apart from the alternative things that teachers can do, what are some other ways that teachers can take charge of their own continued professional development? Are there any unconventional ways that and this is really traditional professional development that I'm talking about, not sort of alternative things, but what are some ways that they can take control of that process rather than kind of waiting for the school to lead the way on that?
That's an interesting point. Well, I suppose the other thing is that teachers are researchers in their classrooms in the first place. I mean, every teacher is a researcher. We're engaging in assessment for learning all the time. Teachers are constantly engaging in formative assessment. And sometimes I think maybe some teachers don't give themselves credit for the research that they're consistently doing in their classrooms and the value that comes from that. And I suppose one way, if you want to focus in on your own classroom and having interventions, and we do this all the time anyway, but really doing that in a systematic way and taking time to, if you want to do some sort of intervention with your class group because of maybe a directive from the school level or something you've noticed might be a challenge in your classroom, to engage in some small scale action research in your own classroom and do it systematically and see how that progresses over time. You set yourself a time period. Okay, I'm going to do this for 6 weeks. I'm going to read up about it and do it in a systematic way, which is what we do all the time, but just extending it even further. That could be interesting for some teachers out there. And also, I mean, there's so many different online courses as well, those MOOCs that are available for teachers to do, you know, in all sorts of areas. It could be, again, I'm talking about kind of more physical activities, I suppose, but of course, learning about something completely different, learning about a period of history you didn't know about before or something like that could be really interesting. Again, I think anything that involves learning something new is just all contributing to that experience of being a lifelong learner. And if you give yourself time to reflect on that, you're engaging then in the reflective cycle in a different way to the way you might from your classroom experience.
Yeah, I think what some schools might need to do, so if you're a school leader and you're listening to this podcast, you might want to give your teachers that freedom rather than structuring their professional learning, oh, they must stay behind and they must do this meeting and they must do this course or they must listen to this actual session on. They might just say, you have an hour or two every week where you can choose how you spend your time, but you must use it to learn something new. And then they could come back. Can you imagine how interesting that would be if they came back and fed back something they learned that was completely unrelated to school or maybe to their classroom, but it developed to them as a professional? That would make for some really interesting listening, because if I were in a school with you, Anna, I would now learn about riding a motorcycle or learn a bit more about Reiki, or somebody would be coming and telling us something about something completely different. Why do you think schools don't do that? Do you have any idea? Because I'm wondering why schools tend to want to structure everything so much.
Well, I'm sure if they have the opportunity, do that for their teachers. But I like the point you've made. It would be interesting to actually introduce that as an actual thing and then come back and feedback on it and what they've learned. Because teaching is so interpersonal as well. You know, it's when you teach, you're giving of yourself, and it's all about those interpersonal interactions. So your personal development is just as important as your professional development. So it's so important that you're in a good space with yourself as well, you know, when you're in the teaching profession. I suppose a lot of schools, you know, sometimes the PD is based on whatever school improvement plan is in place. And so therefore it must link with that. And that makes sense, of course. I mean, schools are so restricted with their time that's available for professional development. But it would be really, really interesting to see what would happen if just for a term, a school decided, okay, let's forget the traditional professional development and give teachers time to go and engage in their own personal development and feedback. I love that idea. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not even asking for schools to do it 100% of the time, but alternating weeks or, once or twice a month, because we can't neglect the core business of school. And obviously getting the school improvement plan right and, following through on that is important. But what if we allowed a little bit of time for that open, free learning that could, bring such richness and such interest to the school community?
Absolutely. And actually, when I was working with ADEC back, it was 2014, 2015, and we had...
You were with ADEC at that time.
Yeah.
So was I.
Really? Maybe that's why we know each other's names. And then you might remember there was very specific professional development that was offered at that time from the different partnership companies. And we would work together with the different companies on differentiation or assessment or whatever it might have been per term. In our school, I worked in Zachar KG in Allain, and we had a wonderful principal and a wonderful cluster manager and a really, really good team. And we actually took the school improvement plan and divided it up into research questions, and then had teams of teachers engage in teacher inquiry or action research in their teams. So they kind of got to pursue those questions that they were particularly interested in pursuing. There were some related to language and literacy, and there were some related to creativity. And so in engaging in those action research projects, they actually got to meet the needs of the school improvement plan, but it was very kind of organic. And even some of the teachers at the time, I remember we actually held a conference, presented our findings within the area, and like a mini conference in the school. But after that, some of the teachers actually went to international conferences and presented their findings. Wow. So that was really, really nice. Yeah. And most of us enjoyed it so much. I have an article about the process that I can share with you after.
Yeah, because, and see how out of that freedom came this lovely organic thing that could now feed back into the school improvement. But schools have to be willing to experiment. I didn't know you were at Zachar KG, very close. I lived in Zachar for years. Funnily enough, I used to be an AVP with ADEC for several years. So, but I was in cycle 1. I was a cycle 1 principal. So obviously that time we might have crossed paths, but not have known. So let's talk about professional learning in the traditional sense. A lot of it has gone online. Do you think there's any space left for face-to-face learning on like conferences and things like that? What do you think will happen? We don't know, but what do you think?
We don't know. I really miss in-person conferences and those connections you make with random people and that bring you down a pathway of thinking about something in a different way. I really, really miss that. So my fingers crossed that things will travel will be easier and we'll be able to have that opportunity again. However, the other thing is that because this whole new world of remote attendance is opened up to us, it makes it easier for us to attend a variety of different conferences and get the learning from there, but without the chit chat at the coffee break, which is where so much of...
But I think that's where the richness is. I mean, we're taking a massive chance. Obviously, we're going to be highly social distanced. We're going to be very cautious, but we are going face-to-face on March 1 and 2 in Dubai at the Middle East School Leadership Conference. We're going to have less people, and we're going to obviously not be able to do so many close face-to-face chats. But I think there is such a need for having face-to-face conferences, even if you can't do the things you used to do, just physically being present somewhere and dedicating that time. I don't think anything compares to it. I don't think online compares to it. You know what I mean? It is just a matter of being physically there. You cannot beat that.
Yeah.
So I'm also keeping my fingers crossed for March 1 and 2 in Dubai for the leadership conference. Here's my, I think, rounding up question to you. In terms of professional learning and lifelong learning for teachers, what would be your wish? What would you like to see happen in this sphere for teachers?
That's a very big question. I think that balance between the personal development and the professional development has to be acknowledged. And the fact that, we can think about pedagogy in different ways as we grow over time. The way I did things 10 years ago, I'm sure is different to the way I'm doing things now. It might be worse, it might be better, but as long as you keep reflecting as well, that's so important, So one thing is the learning. It's all very well to go and learn something new, but what you actually take back from that and then how that influences others is so important, and other people then can become inspired by something you've learned and go and take that off in a different direction. So I think it's that being open to the fluidity of what's possible with any kind of lifelong learning, whether it be personal or professional, and how it impacts on your life as a whole, rather than just as a professional or just in your personal life. For me, I know I used to complain when I was a teacher candidate in initial teacher education. First of all, doing my Bachelor of Education, we used to complain about the lecturers or the professors who hadn't been in a classroom in years. And unfortunately, now I'm one of them, right? So I haven't taught a child since 2013, 2014. And I miss the classroom, but I love teacher education. And I wish there was a way that I could, go in for a week at a time and just have a class to myself and, do all the fun things and have all the read aloud and all of that. So sometimes I think for me, as a teacher educator, your standards get a little bit skewed and you kind of forget the basics of that good pedagogy. And so I think to refresh that understanding, to refresh those skills, it's really important to try and learn something from scratch to get yourself back into that mind of the learner.
Wow. Brilliant. Thank you so much. I think if I took anything away from this episode is that it is important to continue to learn, and that you don't necessarily need to be doing a course or something related to your profession to be able to get the skills that will help you to improve within your profession. And that as teachers, it is okay to go out and do related courses. And it's also okay to go out and do completely unrelated things as long as you continue to learn. And don't be afraid to try new things. So if you've been dreaming of learning to ride a motorcycle or learning to swim or learning to mountain bike or whatever it is, I'm just picking random things, but whatever, what your thing is. And so whatever your thing is, go out and do it, because you're never too old, and you will develop the muscle memory that is needed. And your brain is very, very elastic. It can stretch, it can grow, it can expand, and you can learn new things, and it will refreshen you for the classroom. Because something you said, which stuck with me, you said you have to be in a good headspace as a teacher to be effective. And sometimes stepping away and taking care of you and learning something new puts you in a good headspace. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation. I loved it. And
now we discovered something, that we lived or worked quite close to each other and didn't know each other. But anyhow, such is life. Thank you very much for being on the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Teach Middle East podcast. Visit our website, teachmiddleeast.com, and follow us on social media. The links are in the show notes.